See, things aren't as bad as they seem, folks. You could be chewing on a piece of grass, walking down the road. Welcome, Lyn Rowe, to the program.
Hey.
You know, you're an optimist. I'm an optimist. Probably less than you, but I am an optimist. And I was reading this, and before we get into your topic, this is from Dr. David Eifrig from the Income Intelligence. Pretty smart doctor guy. He says, most people are prone to the golden age fallacy, the feeling that earlier times, often our childhoods, were simpler, safer, and happier.
Okay.
He goes on to say, today, fundamentalist terrorists threaten violence to Western cultures. Ethnic cleansing has devastated African communities.
True.
Financial markets seem shaky. Governments are paralyzed by political gridlock. We could go on. But he goes on, and this is so true, but the olden days weren't any better. Think about it this way. While many people my age, well, I'm older than you. You're only in your late 30s, early 40s, right?
He's good. He's real good. Go ahead.
While many people our age recall the idyllic family life of Leave It to Beaver in the 50s, in reality, we practiced hiding under school desks for nuclear air raid drills. Remember that?
Indeed.
Right now is likely the best, safest time in the history of the world. And he goes on to cite many examples and documents them. I won't do it all, but I'll give you three. We're living in the least violent period in the history of mankind. That's hard to believe today,
hard to believe.
But it is true.
Right.
He says you can read the book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined. Number two, there's more democracy and freedom in the world than ever. Half of the countries in the world are now free and democratic. It's risen, as he says, from 44 in 1973 to 88 today. And then three, economic freedom is at an all-time high, and he goes on to quote all this stuff. So I say this to everybody because in times like this, it's so easy to get negative. Oh, I'm going to lose all my 401k. Oh, I'm going to go broke. No, you're not going to go broke. The stock market's not going to zero. And if you follow a disciplined, solutions-driven financial plan, then you don't have to worry about days like today. And you certainly don't have to worry about what the future may bring for your financial health or your own personal health. How's that for a segue to Lyn Rowe?
It's perfect because, Ray, it's about perspective. I mean, we were just chatting about this off the air. It's about perspective. I mean, you cannot have a short-term perspective on your finances, and you can't have a short-term perspective on things like your healthcare planning, because when you do, you lose sight of the fact that there is going to be, on the financial side, there is going to be recovery. There are going to be times when it's even better than it's been in the past. But with regard to health, unfortunately, we know that we're in great health today. We're young, we're healthy, but that could change at the drop of a hat. I
was talking last week about longevity and people living so much longer. Not necessarily living healthier longer, but living longer. And I made a comment that even younger people today ought to consider, in particular with their IRA money and so forth, purchasing some kind of a bond alternative annuity that had attached to it a guaranteed feature that converts that annuity into a lifetime of income. And I said that even younger people, something that I wouldn't have said 5 or 10 years ago. If you're in your 40s, probably too young to be thinking about an annuity. You and I have discussed this before. If you're in your 40s, maybe you could be too young to be considering long-term health care, but does not the same thing hold true?
Oh, it absolutely holds true. You know, I did some math here. You love to do math, so
I love math, yes.
You love math. And I just looked at what if somebody got the same plan at age 40 that they got at age 70? Okay, what's the difference? Well, first of all, their premium at age 70 is about 68% higher. Now that's pretty phenomenal. And when you start to do the math, you never quite catch up. You never catch up. So you're always going to be better off.
Let me just
Sure.
say what I think you just said in
Okay.
terms that even I can understand. What Lyn, I think, just said, and we have done that math, I've
Yes.
certainly done it before too,
Yes.
is that if you start at age 40 and you pay this super low premium,
Yes.
and you paid it every year, by the time you got to age 70, even if you had invested that money, you can't catch up
No.
with waiting. And that makes one very big assumption. And that is that your health at age 70, in order to qualify to get that coverage,
huge
is as good as it was when you were age 40, which is not likely. Now, I've just gone through an experience myself. I thought I was the healthiest guy on the planet, a couple of pounds overweight, but other than that, I felt good. I had good checkups. I was going strong until one day out in the middle of a lake, a gajillion miles from nowhere, I had a very, very unexpected heart attack,
And very
which
scary.
affects, very scary, affects my insurability, something
Yes.
that I didn't think I would even worry about. But I bought my long-term care 6-7 years ago,
Thank you, God.
fortunately,
Yes.
and I got it at preferred rates,
Yes.
which I'm very grateful of at this point, having done it. Probably a little later, because I had been talking about it, and you know this. I had been talking about it for years. I'm the king of procrastination, I'll be willing to admit it, but I'm so glad that I didn't procrastinate any longer than I did, because you may be coming to me and saying, hey, you know what? You got to wait 4.5, 5 years before we'll even take a look at you now.
Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of people are thinking, well, why do I need to get this kind of coverage before I'm 65, for Pete's sake? And you just gave a perfect example of why. What we know is that people under 50, 12% of those folks are getting turned down for the coverage even today. And between 50 and 60, it's 20%. And then when you get to 60 to 70, it's 25%, and from there it goes up.
Am I correct? And I'm doing this off the top of my head from memory, but I think you shared a stat with me at one time. If it wasn't you, then I shared it with myself from my own research. But is it something like 30% of the claims for long-term care are paid out to individuals under the age of 65?
Yeah.
So if a third of the people that actually file a claim are younger, it would only stand to reason that younger people are at risk
Right.
for, at least they should consider buying a long-term health care
You know,
policy.
I've had a few calls this week from parents wanting to get the coverage on their kids. What a great thing to do for their grandkids.
Listen, stick around, because I shorted you a little bit of time because I wanted to talk about this other stuff, and I still want to talk about this other stuff. However, I will bring Lyn Rowe back for another segment as we tackle this very, very important part of your financial plan. We are living longer, but a lot of people are living longer, and you know, maybe their organs are doing better, but the mind starts to slip. So when we come back, Alzheimer's. Are you prepared for a family member to have a debilitating disease like Alzheimer's? Don't go away.
Sorry, boy, but I've